Her screams echoed down the alley, then came 3 gunshots and silence. She ran barefoot over broken glass, her uniform torn, her lip bloodied, mascara streaked with tears. The night was thick with rain and the smell of fried food from the bar. She escaped. Tamara's lungs burned. She clutched her purse tight against her chest like it held her soul. Behind her, sirens didn't scream, they purred. The patrol car's headlights swerved into the alley, cutting through the dark like a blade. 3 shadows emerged. Uniformed, calm predators. "Now where you think you're going, sweetheart?" One of them grinned, baton tapping his palm. She stumbled backwards, shaking her head, pleading, "Please, you don't have to do this. I didn't tell nobody, I swear." But they already knew. She heard too much. Heard them shaking down the dealer behind the bar. Heard their dirty little secrets that circled her like wolves. The alley swallowed her cries. And then nothing. Just rain hitting metal. Just silence. Just death. Across town, Dre was halfway through a bottle of Hennessy when his phone buzzed once midnight. Unknown number, and a voice said, "Your sister's gone," before the line went dead. At the morgue, he couldn't breathe, her face swollen, bruised, violated, her neck bruised with ligature marks and defensive wounds. The autopsy saying overdose, the police saying she was mixed up with the wrong people, that it looked like a drug deal gone wrong. But Dre knew her, knew she didn't even smoke weed, let alone run with dealers, knew she was saving for a café, knew she died scared and alone. And as the cops zipped her up and the city zipped its mouth shut, something in Dre snapped quietly, fatally, like the sound before a storm. A storm that hadn't arrived yet. 2 weeks before the alley, before the gunshots, before Dre saw his sister zipped into a body bag like a piece of city trash, back when the apartment still smelled like cinnamon toast and burning eggs, and Tamara called from the kitchen, fanning smoke away from the toaster with a dishwell, saying, "Dre, you either eat this or starve. I ain't trying again." While Dre appeared in the doorway, shirtless and groggy, his tattoos crawling up his chest like shadows, his gold chain glinting under the light as he teased her, "You burning the house down again?" To which she smirked, "Only thing I'm burning is my patience." Sliding him a plate of eggs, toast, and the world's saddest turkey bacon, calling it a 5-star breakfast, Mr. Mafia muscle, making him chuckle as he bit into the toast and said, "Tastes like fear," and they laughed. Not the kind you fake to feel better, but the kind that spills out when you forget you're carrying too much. Tamara in a baggy hoodie over her work uniform, her hair tied up in a scarf, eyes still sleepy, but her smile like sunlight as she told him, "I got my eye on that old bodega on 9th. If I save another 800 I can put down a deposit, painted yellow, do breakfast and soul food." And when Dre teased, "You gonna call it what?" she said proudly, "Tammy's table. Everyone eats, even gangsters." A word that stuck like gum on a shoe, making Dre's eyes flick away because he'd been pulling back, tired of blood money and watching his friends die before 30, and Tamara was the only thing in his life that felt untainted before she kissed his forehead, grabbed her bag, and said she'd be late on a double shift, telling him not to wait up while he insisted, his voice low, "You text me when you're off." And she promised, always, and he watched her leave through the window, her hoodie pulled up, her walk quick and confident as she disappeared into the neighborhood, where kids still played tag between parked cars and old men sat on porches with dice cups and stories. The next few days blurred together. Tamara worked nights at the bar on Radley and 5th. Long hours, lousy tips, drunk men, loud music. She didn't complain, said she was getting closer to her cafe dream. Dre spent his afternoons lifting weights at the gym and evenings ducking phone calls from Leon. He played lookout on one job just once in 2 weeks, but even then his head wasn't in it. He thought about her, about eggs, about yellow paint. On Tuesday, she brought home a cupcake from work. "Customer gave me a tip in frosting. Looks poisoned," Dre joked. She fake gasped, "You ain't got no romance in your soul." They sat on the couch and shared it while watching old movies. She leaned her head on his shoulder. It had always been the two of them. No mum, no dad worth remembering, just Dre and Tamara against the world. On Thursday, Dre found a small notebook on the kitchen table. Inside, cafe layout sketches, scribbled menus, cost estimates, chicken and waffles, $8.99, but make it pretty. She had doodled stars next to that. He smiled, proud and aching. Friday night came like any other. She left for her shift wearing new earrings, said she got them on sale. Dre teased her about them being fake. She flipped him off and blew a kiss before stepping into the night. That was the last time he saw her alive. And now, all that peace, all that laughter, toast, cupcakes, yellow paint was a ghost. He stood in the same kitchen, 2 weeks later, same toaster, same table. Only this time her chair was empty. The notebook still sat there, open, unfinished. Like her. The notebook still sat there, open, unfinished. Like her. Dre hadn't touched it since she left that night, earrings dancing in the hall light. The yellow sticky note still fluttered on the fridge door. Double shift. Don't wait up. He waited anyway. She never came home. It started earlier that evening at Rico's bar. A rundown watering hole on Radley and Fifth, with sticky floors and cheap beer. The place wasn't classy, but it paid tips, and Tamara was saving every dime. That night the regulars were rowdier than usual. A backroom deal ran late. A big man with neck tattoos, whispering to 3 uniformed cops who shouldn't have been there. Tamara passed by the hallway on her way to the staff restroom. She wasn't trying to listen. She didn't want to know, but she heard them anyway. Shipment drops Tuesday. We take our cut. No eyes on it. You got that? You let your boys run dope through my street again, and we're done protecting you. Then we got a problem. Footsteps. A chair scraped. She froze, heart hammering, ears straining. Then a voice she recognized. Sergeant Rick Delaney, one of the patrol cops who always lingered too long at the bar. Eyes too low, questions too personal. Don't let the waitress hear you. That black bitch already stares too much. The sound of a palm slapping someone's chest. Laughter. She tiptoed back, praying the floor wouldn't creak. Didn't breathe until she was back behind the counter. Her hands trembled as she wiped a clean glass. Her smile was stiff, like it was glued on. She didn't tell anyone what she'd heard. Didn't text Dre, didn't call. She just worked the rest of her shift in silence. She left around 2:15 a.m. Surveillance cameras at least the working ones. Her exiting the back door with her bag slung over one shoulder. The lot was empty except for one car, a black and white cruiser. The same one that often parked outside Rico's, even when nothing was going on. The taillights blinked. The engine purred. She looked back at the door, hesitated, then kept walking toward the bus stop. The cruiser pulled out slow, followed her, according to official police records. What little was released, Tamara was stopped for questioning regarding a suspicious incident. No specifics, no paperwork filed, no arrest made. She was never booked, never processed. But she never made it home either. Dre's phone rang at 7:42 a.m. Unknown number. Again, the voice was different this time. Tired, emotionless. Your sister's body was found in an alley off Ivor Street. You'll need to come identify. Click, that's all. No condolences, no apology, just a location. Like someone returning a lost wallet. The alley was cold, gray, wet. Tamara's body lay against a dumpster, partially covered with a torn bedsheet. Her clothes were shredded, lips split, knees scraped. Her eyes were open, wide, empty. The coroner listed cause of death as acute overdose opioids in her system. High concentration, enough to kill twice over. But Dre knew better. She didn't even take Tylenol for cramps. She hated pills, hated the smell of hospitals. Dottie demanded the autopsy report, got it through a friend who owed him. Defensive wounds on her arms, hemorrhaging, bruising on thighs and wrists, ligature marks on the neck. The pathologist marked possible signs of sexual assault but left it unconfirmed. Said evidence was compromised. They always say that. Police ruled it accidental, suggested she was possibly involved in criminal activity, hinted at gang ties, said they'd look into it, then moved on. The security footage from the bar, deleted due to malfunction. No GPS logs from the cruiser, no body cam footage. Internal Affairs had no cause to investigate. And yet, Dre knew. He knew it was them. Sergeant Delaney, Officer Mason, Deputy Ward. They'd been sniffing around her for weeks. Delaney once cornered her after hours, said he could protect her from local gangs. She told Dre about it, laughed it off. But Dre remembered that laugh. It had an edge, a little nervous, a little fake. Now it echoed inside him like a war drum. No one in the neighborhood would talk. Some were scared, others were paid. Even Dre's own people, his Mafia circle, told him to let it go. Big Leon pulled him aside at the barber shop. Voice low, firm. Cops didn't do this. Don't go hunting shadows. You stir up a war, we all bleed. But Dre wasn't hunting shadows. He was chasing ghosts. And he was starting to see them in broad daylight. At Tamara's vigil, her old friends lit candles in cracked jars. No news van showed up. No officers offered condolences. The world turned, like she never existed. Dre stood alone that night in front of her grave, wind biting at his jacket. He stared at the dirt, didn't cry, didn't speak, but his silence roared louder than gunfire. They killed her, and the city thought he'd just take it, smile, grieve, move on. But they forgot one thing. Dre wasn't a civilian. He knew how to make ghosts. Dre knew how to make ghosts. But in the days after Tamara's murder, he felt like one himself. He stopped answering calls, let his burner phone ring until it died, kept his blinds drawn and his lights off. The silence of the apartment was louder. Then gunshots, now no music, no laughter, no burnt toast smell. Just the ticking of the old clock Tamara insisted on keeping in the kitchen. He didn't eat. He barely slept. Most nights he just sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the framed picture on the nightstand, the one where she's grinning wide, a cupcake in one hand, middle finger in the other, her eyes full of fire, full of life now. She was cold. And the world didn't stop. 3 days after the funeral he walked to the alley where she was dumped. They'd washed the blood off the concrete, but the smell lingered wet asphalt. Rotting garbage. Something darker underneath. Dre stood there for an hour, in silence. Then, without warning, he punched the wall, once, twice, over and over, until his knuckles split open and blood smeared across the bricks. His breath came in ragged gasps. His vision blurred not from tears, but from rage. He slid down to the ground, back against the same dumpster they found her next to, and he whispered, "I'm sorry, baby girl, I should have been there." He tried to do it the right way. For her, he cleaned up, shaved, put on a collared shirt, walked into the 9th precinct and asked to speak to the detective in charge. They gave him a seat in the waiting room. He sat there for 3 hours. No one came. Finally, a uniformed officer, young, nervous, handed him a card with a name and number scribbled on it. Said, "We're sorry for your loss." Loss like she was a dropped wallet, a dead plant. Dre took the card, looked at it once, then tore it in half. He hired a lawyer with the little clean money he had, a soft-voiced woman named Lara Chen, known for taking police misconduct cases. She listened, took notes, asked questions, promised to file a complaint with Internal Affairs. Within 48 hours, the city sent back a formal notice. Due to lack of credible evidence, the case is closed. No wrongdoing found. Closed. Like a door slammed in his face. Even Big Leon came calling. Dre found him waiting outside his apartment building, leaning against a black Lincoln with tinted windows and a face that hadn't changed expression in 20 years. Leon didn't yell, didn't threaten, just spoke low and slow, like a father scolding a child. "You make noise like this, people start looking. You know better than that." Dre didn't respond. Leon sighed. "She was a good girl, but bad things happen to good people every day. You stir this pot, we all get burned." Dre looked him dead in the eyes, then let it burn. Leon shook his head and left without another word. That night, Dre broke. He pulled every photo of Tamara out of the drawer, school pictures, birthday Polaroids, her 8th grade dance, the day she got her bar job. He laid them all out on the floor like puzzle pieces that could bring her back. Then he dropped to his knees and sobbed, screamed, cursed God, begged for her to walk through the door, call him an idiot, tell him it was all a mistake. He clutched her notebook to his chest, crumpled a page in his fist, and cried until his body gave out. The next morning, he sat in silence at her desk, staring at a sticky note on the wall. In her handwriting, it read, "Build something that lasts." He started walking, nowhere specific, just to breathe. The streets were still the same, vendors shouting over fried fish, kids kicking a flat ball down cracked pavement, sirens somewhere. In the distance he passed Rico's bar. It was open, neon lights buzzing like nothing had happened. He walked past it, down to the corner liquor store, bought a bottle of whiskey and stood under the flickering streetlight across from the precinct. Just watched cops coming in and out, laughing, living that night. He stood in his kitchen, bottle half empty, knuckles scabbed over. He looked at Tamara's photo on the fridge, the one where she's wearing her Tammy's table apron mock-up, grinning with syrup on her chin, and he whispered, "They ain't gonna do nothin', not the courts, not the lawyers, not Leon, not God." Then, quieter, "No one's gonna get justice unless I take it." The wind howled through the cracked window. It almost sounded like an answer. Something shifted. He took the notebook and slid it into his duffel, not to protect it, not anymore, but to remember. He tossed the bottle, threw out the suit he wore to the funeral. Then he opened a locked drawer and pulled out the piece he hadn't touched in a year, a cold black Beretta with the serial number scratched off. Loaded it, checked the chamber, and for the first time since Tamara died, he didn't feel powerless. He felt focused, because grief could drown a man. But vengeance taught him how to breathe again. Vengeance taught Dre how to breathe again. And breathing meant observing, waiting, learning. Before he made ghosts, he needed to know exactly who the monsters were. Sergeant Rick Delaney was the first name Dre confirmed. Tamara had mentioned him before, how he always showed up late, stayed too long, stood too close. called her girl like it was her first name, asked her questions that had nothing to do with patrol and everything to do with control. Delaney was the oldest of the three, 48, white, ex-Marine, decorated, married, father of two. In public, he was all square-jawed patriotism and charisma, the kind of cop who shook hands at parades and posed with smiling children in front of the precinct's flagpole. But in private, he was colder than the steel in his badge. Dre started watching him, followed him home, took notes. Delaney lived in a gated suburb 15 minutes from the city. Two-car garage, perfect lawn, wife who smiled politely and blinked, a little too often, every Thursday night. Delaney left the house after 10 p.m., dressed in jeans and a hoodie. He drove to a side street downtown, parked near a vacant lot, and disappeared into a backdoor poker ring hidden behind a locksmith's shop. High stakes illegal. Dre watched from the shadows, memorizing faces, license plates. Delaney left 2 hours later, usually angry, sometimes with blood on his knuckles. Once Dre caught him pushing a man against the wall, spitting into his face, calling him a junkie rat. The mask was cracking. Beneath the uniform, there was violence waiting to be unleashed. Officer Clyde Mason was the next, early 40s, broad-shouldered, church-going PTA father, a clean record and a fake smile. To the community, Mason was the good cop, the one who handed out toys on Christmas and posed for charity drives, but Dre found the cracks. A waitress at a downtown strip club told him Mason came in twice a week alone, always sat in a dark corner booth, never drank, never tipped, just watched, stared, made the girls nervous. A dancer named Jessica whispered to Dre when he pressed her, "He likes pain. Not on him, on us." She showed him bruises once, said she'd been warned not to talk, said Mason wore gloves. When he visited, no fingerprints. Dre's jaw clenched so tight he thought his teeth would snap. He paid her $500 to disappear for a while, gave her a burner phone, said if she ever saw Mason again, she should call him first, not 911. She nodded, hands shaking. Deputy Sean Ward was the youngest, 28, still new enough to be clumsy, still human enough to flinch. Tamara once said he looked guilty every time he walked into Rico's, like he wanted to apologize for just existing. Ward didn't have the same darkness in his eyes as Delaney or Mason, but he had something worse: silence. He followed orders, looked the other way, laughed at the wrong times and cried in secret. Dre trailed him for a week. Ward lived alone in a cheap apartment 2 blocks from the station. No girlfriend, no visitors, just a cat and a stack of delivery boxes outside his door. At night, he drank, watched old war movies, read books about Justice Saronic. On day 5, Dre followed him to a cemetery, watched him kneel beside a headstone for nearly an hour. Mother's name carved into it, died when he was a teen. He sat there crying, mouthing something, praying maybe. So Dre knew there was still a soul inside Ward. But even souls rot when they're buried in silence too long. In the precinct, the 3 men acted like kings. Untouchable. IA Internal Affairs had looked the other way a dozen times. Mason was covered by the mayor's cousin, who owed him a favor. Delaney had friends high up, old war buddies turned state troopers. Ward was protected by nothing but ignorance, yet still somehow shielded. The blue wall held strong, and behind closed doors, they laughed. A snitch from inside the precinct, an old beat cop who owed Dre a long-forgotten favor, told him what they said. They joked about her, called her mouthy, said she needed to learn respect. Respect. That word echoed like a shot through Dre's skull. So he made a plan. He started small notes, maps, patterns. He tracked Mason's late-night visits, logged Delaney's poker debts, recorded Ward's routines. He learned where they parked, what time they left, where they ate, who they feared, and what they were hiding. He didn't need guns yet. He needed information, leverage, patience. Each man had a weakness. Delaney had a mistress, some 25-year-old bartender who didn't know he had kids. Mason was knee-deep in gambling, debt owed 15 grand to a Dominican crew who were tired of waiting. Ward had guilt, regret, maybe even shame, and that was the deepest wound of all. But Dre wasn't just collecting secrets. He was feeding something inside him that twisted tighter every time he saw Delaney laugh in a news clip, or Mason escort a child across the street, or Ward walk out of the station with his badge still shining. Every time they walked free, Tamara's grave got colder. He visited it once a week, sat with her notebook in his lap, whispered updates. They still breathing, but not for long. Each man thought he was safe. Delaney believed in rank. Mason believed in appearances. Ward believed that silence would save him, but Dre believed in justice. The kind you dig up with your bare hands if you have to. The kind no badge can protect you from. And now, he had faces to go with the rage. 3 men, 3 monsters, 3 names on a list. And justice was coming for all of them one by one. 3 names, 3 monsters, 3 deaths waiting to happen. Dre stopped walking in circles, stopped sitting in shadows. Now he moved with purpose, with calculation, with quiet rage, so cold it could freeze fire. He needed tools, not just weapons, but phones, unmarked plates, clean gloves, silence, and for that he had to call in a ghost from his past. Nico Alvarez, hitman, money launderer, fixer, the kind of man who always wore black, even at weddings. The kind of man who could kill you with either a Glock or a garden hose and sleep like a baby afterward. Dre hadn't spoken to him in years, not since he'd tried to claw his way out of the underworld. But vengeance made beggars of all men. He found Nico in a corner booth of a strip mall diner, slicing into pancakes like he had nowhere better to be. Nico didn't look up, just chewed and said, "You wouldn't be here unless someone was already dead or about to be." Dre slid a photo across the table. Tamara, the one from her cafe, notebook, bright smile, apron, flower on her cheek. Nico stared at it for a long time. His fork stopped moving. His voice got quiet. "I remember her," he said. "You used to show me pictures, said she was your reason for leaving." Dre nodded. "Now she's the reason I'm coming back." That night, Nico took him to a garage beneath a pawn shop he owned. Inside, weapons clean, untraceable, a 9mm Sig Sauer, a combat knife, a Kevlar vest, a burner phone preloaded with encrypted messaging. Nico handed him keys to a silver with fake tags and a dash cam wiped clean. Dre stood silent for a moment, letting it all sink in. Nico lit a cigarette and said, "This path only leads one way, brother. You ready?" Dre looked at him, eyes burning but calm. No more talking. Over the next week, he trained like a man possessed. The shooting range after hours paid cash. No ID. He practiced with one hand, eyes closed. Rapid fire. Let the kickback bruise his palms and keep going. He went back to the gym boxing ring in the basement of an old church. Worked the bag till his knuckles split again. Sparred with strangers. Took hits to remember what pain felt like. Not grief, not sorrow, pain. The kind that tightens your vision and makes your heart beat slower, not faster. Pain was his sharpening stone, but late at night, the doubts crept in. Tamara's voice in the back of his mind, her laughter, her dreams. She wanted him out of this life. She said it every time he came home with bruised knuckles or blood on his shirt. "You don't gotta fight anymore, Dre, you just gotta live." Now, her voice haunted him. At 3 a.m., he stood at her grave, again 3rd time in 10 days. The city slept around him. Cold wind whispered through the cemetery trees. He crouched beside her name, etched in stone, and broke open again. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have walked you home that night. I should have made you quit that job. I should have." He stopped himself, because what came next wasn't weakness. It was purpose. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a photograph of her kissed at the edges, stained with thumbprints, and he pressed it against the stone. "I promise you," he said, eyes glassy, voice shaking, "they'll pay. Every last one." The first strike came 2 nights later. Officer Clyde Mason, clean-cut sadist, family man with a monster's heart. Dre followed him from his late-night trip to a strip club back to the suburbs. Mason parked in his driveway, unaware of the ghost trailing him. Dre waited until the lights in the house turned off. Then he moved, gloves on, hood up. He poured gasoline in a slow, perfect circle around the car. Mason's precious silver SUV, family stickers on the back window. He stared at those for a long moment. A little boy, a dog, a wife, innocent faces on a monster's chariot. Then he struck the match. Flames whooshed upward in a burst of orange and smoke. The fire ate the leather seats, the steering wheel, the baby booster in the back. Dre stepped away from the blaze.com/methodical. And before he vanished into the shadows, he dropped something at the edge of the driveway. A photograph, Tamara smiling, holding her cafe sketch. On the back, scribbled, in red ink, "Do you remember her now?" The next morning the fire made the local news. The official report called it possible vandalism. No suspect, no leads. Mason called in sick, stayed home, installed new cameras, but cameras couldn't stop what was coming. Dre watched him from across the street that afternoon, sipping coffee from a gas station cup. He wasn't grieving anymore. He wasn't broken. He wasn't even angry. He was hunting. He returned to Nico's garage that night, reloaded, recalibrated. Nico raised an eyebrow. "One down." "Not yet," Dre replied, but he smelled the smoke. Nico grinned. "You always had your own way of making noise." Dre opened the trunk and placed another photograph inside this one. Not burned, not torn, a fresh printout. Delaney's face. The next target. Dre knew the city like the lines in Tamara's hand. He knew when to hide, when to show, when to run, and when to strike. And he knew that this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about balance. For every night she spent working to survive, one of them would know fear. For every moment she begged for mercy, one of them would beg for air. For every tear she shed, one of them would bleed. The game had changed. And Dre wasn't playing anymore. He was rewriting the rules. Delaney's photo sat in the glove box next to it. A pair of latex gloves, a folded blueprint of the downtown. Precincts, parking routes, and a hunting knife sharpened so fine it could split a raindrop. Dre was meticulous now. Surgical. The first fire was a message. But messages alone don't bury the dead. He was ready to make his next move. But before he could, the system began to tighten its grip. It started with a phone call from Carlos, Dre's oldest friend inside the crew. Carlos ran numbers, cleaned cash, kept his ear to the pavement. He'd known Dre since they were running sneakers and smokes through alleys at 14. He was loyal until loyalty risked survival. Leon wants to talk, Carlos said, voice low, clipped. Now, the meeting wasn't at the usual hangout. Not the backroom pool hall, not the strip club. This time, it was a church, neutral ground. The pews were empty except for Big Leon, seated in the front row, his thick fingers tapping against a gold-plated cane. He didn't look up when Dre entered, just gestured to the pew beside him. Dre sat, silent. Leon spoke first. I know it was you. Dre said nothing. You think the cops won't trace it back to us? Leon's voice had no anger, just wait. They're not stupid, and they're getting jumpy. When they get jumpy, they dig, and when they dig, they don't care who bleeds. Still, Dre said nothing. Leon finally turned his head, eyes sharp and dangerous. I let you grieve. I even understood your fire. But that fire's burning too close to home now. You're not just making noise, Dre, you're bringing heat. I never used your name, never used your resources. Leon chuckled bitterly. Doesn't matter. You're one of us. That means every cop you scare, every headline you make, every fire you light, it reflects on me. A beat. You want revenge. I get it. I buried cousins too. But this path, it ends with you in a body bag or chained to a cell. Leon leaned in. So I'm saying this once. Stop or I'll stop you. Dre stared forward at the stained glass window. St. Michael slaying a demon. Without turning, he whispered, then you'll have to kill me. Leon didn't move, didn't blink. Get out. Carlos caught up with him in the lot, leaned against Dre's car, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. Man, he said, exhaling. You gotta slow down. I can't. Carlos grabbed his arm. Tamara was my friend too, bro. You think I don't want to break skulls, but this ain't the way. You're gonna burn down everything. Dre looked him dead in the eyes. Everything's already burned. Carlos let him go. The next day, Dre's burner phone buzzed. Unknown number, but the voice on the other end was familiar, soft, controlled. Nia, his ex. She was a journalist, now investigative, respected, halfway to a Pulitzer. She and Dre had burned out years ago, but not before Tamara made Nia promise to look out for her big brother. I've been hearing things, she said, about arson. Cops nervous, gang boys real quiet lately. Not my scene anymore, Dre lied. Then why's your name showing up in precinct whispers? He didn't answer. Nia sighed. I don't know what you're planning, Dre, but you need to be careful. They're watching you. That made him pause. Who? I don't know yet, but I'll find out. Just don't be reckless. Dre smiled faintly. You forgot who you're talking to? No, she said. I remember exactly who I'm talking to. That's why I'm scared. That night, Dre cracked the back of his phone. Inside the case, behind the battery, was a blinking red light. A tap. Tiny, military grade. Expensive. He crushed it under his boot. He moved faster now. No more hesitation. Clyde Mason would be first. Dre found him exiting a strip club near midnight, drunk, stumbling, keys fumbling in his hand. The parking lot was empty. The night humid and thick. Dre followed on foot, hoodie up, steps silent. Mason didn't notice the shadow behind him until it was too late. The knife Dre used was small, sharp, and quiet. He moved like he was slicing meat in the dark. A clean puncture behind the ear. Quick, almost surgical. Mason didn't scream. Dre caught his body before it hit the ground. He dragged him behind a dumpster, stripped his pockets, took his badge, wallet, weapon, everything. Then, he made it look messy, pulled Mason's pants down halfway, smashed a bottle beside the body, staged it like a mugging gone wrong, a street robbery, nothing more. By the time police found the body, Dre was 3 blocks away, walking like just another man headed home. The next morning, headlines read, "Officer murdered in possible robbery. Investigation ongoing. No suspects. No witnesses. No answers." Dre sat in a diner with Nico, reading the article between bites of eggs. Nico smirked. "Clean work." Dre nodded. "It's only just begun." But the city was changing. The cops were rattled. Delaney cancelled his regular poker game. Ward started carrying 2 guns instead of 1. Unmarked cars began circling neighborhoods more often. Plainclothes detectives showed up at Leon's establishments, flashing badges and asking too many questions. Even Dre's landlord got a visit from city inspectors. They checked plumbing and fire exits, but took photos of Dre's door. The message was clear. They knew someone was coming. That same week, Carlo sent Dre a voice message. "They're gonna try to pin it on somebody soon. They can't afford to look weak, and Leon's not protecting you anymore." Then, after a pause, "Get out while you can, brother." Dre deleted the message, but his chest tightened. He moved apartments, switched cars, bought 2 new burner phones, 1 for surveillance, 1 for strategy. He took a route to the boxing gym that looped through alleys, doubled back 3 times, and ended with him entering through a side door. He stopped sleeping full nights. Too many creaks, too much weight in the dark, and the guilt started creeping in again. Not for Mason, never for him, but for Tamara. Would she want this? Would she hate what he'd become? He sat by her grave, again, silent under the stars. This time, he didn't cry, didn't whisper apologies. He just stared at the headstone and said, "One down." He knew Delaney was next, and Delaney knew it too, because 2 days after Mason's death, Delaney requested temporary reassignment, claimed stress, said he was concerned for his safety. The department gave him desk duty at the main precinct, safer, surrounded, watched, but Dre didn't care. He'd hunted in tighter cages before, and now, the system had a pulse. Cops were watching everyone, phones were tapped, cameras installed, streets combed. But Dre wasn't running. He was just waiting for the next shadow to fall. Because a storm doesn't beg for permission. It just arrives. And Dre, he was the storm now. Dre didn't sleep the night before he took Sean Ward. He sat in the corner of a motel room, hood up, burner phone off, pistol disassembled on the table beside him. He wasn't praying, wasn't meditating. He was rehearsing, not the kidnapping, the conversation. Because deep down, he knew Ward would talk. Guilt made men leak like busted pipes. Sean Ward left the precinct at 11:13 p.m. like oars alone. Quiet, head down. He didn't drink, didn't gamble, didn't womanize. He just drove his beat-up Corolla home, parked under a flickering street lamp, and carried his grocery bags upstairs. Dre waited till the lights went out. Then, he knocked soft when Ward cracked the door. Dre didn't give him a chance to speak. The butt of the pistol hit his temple hard enough to drop him before he could scream. By the time Ward came to, he was zip-tied to a chair in an abandoned mechanic shop just outside city limits. Blood dripping from a cut above his eyebrow, duct tape over his mouth. A single overhead light buzzed above him. Dre stood 10 feet away, arms folded, face unreadable. He peeled the tape off slowly. Ward didn't scream, just looked at him, eyes wide, chest rising fast. "You know who I am," Dre said flatly. Ward nodded. "Good. Saves time." He took a slow step forward, then dropped something at Ward's feet. It was Tamara's photo, creased, burned at the edges, but whole. Ward stared at it, his lip trembling. I didn't touch her," he whispered. "I swear to God." Dre didn't move. "But you watched." Ward blinked hard. "I yet wasn't supposed to go that far. I didn't know Delaney was gonna. He said we were just scaring her, that's all." Dre leaned in close. "You watched." Ward's eyes welled with tears. "I couldn't stop them. I froze. I wanted to, but they were my unit. Man, my life depended on keeping my mouth shut." Dre's jaw clenched, "And hers depended on you opening it." Ward looked down. "I know." Silence, just the hum of the light, the distant bark of a stray dog outside. Then Dre asked, "Why didn't you come forward?" Ward whispered, "Because I'm a coward." Dre didn't answer, just stared. Then he walked to the workbench, picked up a pair of pliers, and turned back around. Ward panicked. "No please man, I'm sorry. I swear to God, I'm sorry." Dre stared at the pliers, stared at Ward. He thought of Tamara, her laughter, her stupid cupcake joke, her half-written cafe menu, her open eyes in the alley. Then, he dropped the pliers. "No," he said quietly, "you don't get to die easy." Dre didn't kill Ward, but he made sure Ward never forgot Tamara's name. A broken jaw, 2 shattered fingers, a scar down his left cheek that would last forever. Then he dumped him outside the ER entrance with a note pinned to his chest. I spared you. She didn't get that mercy. The city erupted. Ward went silent, claimed he didn't remember anything, refused to identify his attacker, claimed it was a mugging, but the cops knew. Now Delaney was all that remained. Dre didn't need to hunt for him. Delaney had run. Nico's contacts tracked him to a woodland cabin 3 hours outside the city, an old hunting lodge the cops used for poker, drinks, and secrets. No neighbors, no signal, just trees and ghosts. Dre arrived just before sunset. Delaney's truck was parked out front. Inside, the lights were on. A fire burned in the hearth. A bottle of whiskey half gone on the table. Delaney sat in a recliner, a pistol resting on his lap. He didn't even flinch when the door opened. "You finally show," he said, smiling faintly. Dre stepped inside, gun raised, closing the door behind him. "You ran," Dre said. Delaney chuckled. "I relocated." He poured a drink, didn't offer one. "You think I don't know how this ends," Delaney said, sipping. Clyde's dead. Ward's broken, and you've gone full boogeyman. Dre didn't speak. "You ain't the first thug to think. Revenge makes you righteous, but you're not special, just another animal chasing a ghost." He stood slowly, arms wide. "So what's it gonna be? Bullet to the head? A knife? You gonna make it messy?" Dre's hands didn't shake. Delaney grinned wider. "Your sister was a mouthy little bitch. Thought she could threaten us. She was nothing. Just a waitress with dreams that didn't mean shit." Dre's vision tunneled. Delaney kept going. "You're killing for a whore who got herself killed." Dre snapped. He didn't shoot. He lunged. The gun clattered to the floor as he tackled Delaney to the ground. Fists flew hard, fast, merciless. Blood sprayed. Bones cracked. Delaney tried to fight back, but Dre was a machine now. A storm in human skin. He beat him until the man stopped laughing. Until the face that smiled in Tamara's last memories was unrecognizable. Until his knuckles were raw again like that first night in the alley. Then, breathing heavy, Dre stood up. He didn't finish him with a bullet. That would have been too kind. Instead, he dragged Delaney's barely conscious body to a wooden post, tied him to it with old hunting rope, gagged him with the same whiskey rag he drank from. Then, Dre walked to the fire pit, grabbed a log still burning at one end. He lit the curtains first. The couch caught fast. The rug, the walls, the dry timber screamed with flame. Delaney started thrashing. Dre didn't look back. He walked out the door into the cold night, smoke curling behind him like a cape. He stood at the edge of the woods, watching the flames rise, paint the sky orange, and when the cabin collapsed, he reached into his jacket and pulled out something. Small Tamara's locket, the one she wore every day, the one the morgue returned in a plastic evidence bag. He opened it. Inside, a tiny photo of them both young, happy, unbroken. He kissed it once, then turned and walked into the trees, never looking back. Justice wasn't clean. It didn't come with a gavel or a prayer. It came with fire. And in that fire, Dre buried the last of his pain. Smoke still lingered in the woods when the sirens came, but Dre was long gone. He walked for hours, through pine and mud, until the road welcomed him like an old enemy. 2 days passed. Quiet days. Restless nights. He slept in the back seat of the Elantra, parked in a junkyard outside the city, Tamara's locket resting against his chest. He knew it was over. On the 3rd morning, they got him. Surveillance footage from a trail camera meant for deer, not men, had caught him leaving the woods. A neighbor 2 miles out reported a lone black man walking near the highway, matching his description. SWAT moved in fast. Unmarked vans. No warning. They found him sitting at a bus stop near River Point, drinking coffee from a styrofoam cup, staring at the horizon like it might answer something for him. He didn't run, didn't speak, just raised his hands, slow and calm, and said, "I'm ready." The news broke by noon. Vigilantes suspected in murder of 2 officers, assault on a 3rd, sister's murder linked to cover-up. Black enforcer takes law into his own hands. His mugshots spread like wildfire, eyes swollen, lips chapped, no expression. Some called him a killer, others called him a revolution. And then Tamara's story came out. First a blog post, then a podcast, then a headline. Waitress silenced. What happened to Tamara King? Hashtag say her name, hashtag justice for Tamara near his ex. The reporter released the full piece she'd been working on in secret. Surveillance gaps. Discarded evidence. A police report that changed wording 3 times. A toxicology screen that had inconsistencies. The public exploded. Within days, Protesters flooded the courthouse steps, candles, posters, street murals of Tamara's face. Some signs read, "He shouldn't have had to." Others, "This is not justice. This is survival." But there were those who pushed back. Blue Lives Matter protesters held counter-rallies. "Called Dre a terrorist," said Tamara Lead. That Dre fabricated it all, a war of headlines. But Dre stayed silent. In jail, they placed him in solitary for his own safety. He didn't speak for weeks, didn't take interviews, didn't cry, didn't smile. The only thing he kept in his cell was the folded locket photos of Tamara and a drawing sketched in pencil by another inmate who had read the news. It was Tamara, smiling, wearing an apron that said Tammy's Table. One afternoon, a lawyer arrived, not a court-appointed shark. Someone different, young, black, calm, fire in her eyes. "I'm here pro bono," she said. "You've started something bigger than you realize." Dre didn't respond. She slid a document across the table. "Do you want to fight this?" He looked down at the paper, saw his name, Andre King, written in bold above charges that could bury him forever. Then he pushed the file back. "I'm not fighting," he said softly. The lawyer stared at him. "Why not?" His voice didn't waver. "Because I already won." What he meant wasn't victory in the eyes of the law. He meant they knew now. They knew what happened to Tamara. They knew what the badge had buried, what the system had tried to erase. And he didn't need a courtroom to prove her life mattered. He'd carved it into headlines, into flames, into scars. Dre's sentence came down 3 months later to life terms. No parole, no surprises, no breaks. But even the judge seemed somber when reading the verdict. Outside the courthouse, a crowd waited, divided but loud. On one side, justice served. On the other, a broken system punishes the broken. In the weeks that followed, Tamara's story inspired legislation. Proposals none passed. The precinct issued a quiet statement of sorrow. No apologies, no responsibility. Delaney and Mason's funerals were televised. Full honors, bagpipes, folded flags, salutes. Tamara never got there. But something else rose in her name. Tammy's Table. It opened 6 months later in a reclaimed corner store near Radley and 5th. Brick red awning, yellow painted door, soft jazz from a mounted speaker. Inside, wooden tables, bright light. Her photo framed above the cash register. The owner, a young black woman named Shanice, who used to bust tables with Tamara. Dre had wired every dollar. He had left to her clean and unclean, all of it. She received it through Nico in a sealed envelope. No return address, no explanation needed. Inside, just a note. Build something that lasts. Dre's name never appeared on the restaurant license, but on the back wall, hand-painted in bold letters, a mural read, "In memory of Tamara King, she served more than food." And beneath it, #justice served different years past. Protests faded. Journalists moved on. The city found new wounds. But Dre stayed in his cell, day in, day out, silent still. Some guards hated him. Others nodded in quiet respect. He never started fights, never caused noise, just read books, worked in the laundry. And every Sunday afternoon, he'd take out that pencil sketch of Tamara, look at it for a long time, trace the lines, smile just barely. And in his mind he could still hear her voice. "You don't gotta fight forever, big bro. You just gotta live." One winter morning he sat by the small window of the prison rec room. Snow fell lightly beyond the bars. Another inmate walked past and asked, "You ever regret it?" Dre didn't look away from the snow. He just said, "I couldn't save her life," then paused. His hand slipped into his shirt where her locket still hung. "But I made sure they'd never forget her."